Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name's Amanda. I made this channel to help other people get into medical school. So today's video is going to be about making a school list. Alright, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of making a school list, I do want to give like two general tips. Number one is you should probably apply to more schools than you think you're going to need. This process is a super duper duper crapshoot. Even some of the most qualified applicants don't get in sometimes, again, because the process is so random. You see it all the time on Reddit and SDN. I know it personally from going through it. I know it from people who have gone through it. It is just very unpredictable. So, and it's also a numbers game. So if you only apply to 15 schools, like, you could get lucky, but that's not the best way to play it. There was a time, I think, where applying to 20 schools was like normal, but I think more and more, the more competitive it's getting, I would say that applying to at least 30 schools is a good idea, and ideally more like 40. I know there are financial concerns. If you apply for the fee assistance program and get it, which I did, you get 20 schools covered for your primary, and then the secondary fee is waived for every single school you apply to or submit a secondary to. So there's that to consider. But yeah, I personally applied to like 48 or 49 schools, which is a little overkill and probably more than I needed, but I did not want to reapply again. I also didn't apply DO, so I just was really trying to cover my bases. So again, I would say minimum 30, more like 40 is probably good for most people. Yeah, applying broadly is key. So that's number one. Number two, should I apply MD and DO? Should I apply only DO? Should I apply MD or only MD? That's a very complicated question, and I unfortunately, if I don't know your specific circumstances, can't tell you specifically what you should do. But one thing to remember is that you can practice medicine with an MD or a DO, right? We're here to be doctors, so you can get to where you want with either degree. Something else to consider is that if you think you might want to do a competitive specialty, it is going to be a little harder if you go DO. So those are just things to keep in the back of your mind. And another thing you have to ask yourself is, would you rather go to a DO school or would you rather reapply? And that is a very personal thing that I can't tell you, that there's no right or wrong answer. It just depends on your goals, your circumstances. Stats wise, I think the median GPA of accepted students to MD schools last year was like a 3.78 or 3.79, and the median MCAT was like a 5.11 or a 5.12. So I think if you're below that, you might want to have a few DO schools on your list. Also apply MD, but I would definitely have a few DO schools. Even if you're around that, I would personally say, again, if you rather not reapply and you're okay with going DO, you might as well. But again, the stats thing is not a hard and fast rule. It very much depends on your circumstances. A lot of people have unbalanced stats like I did. I had a 3.29 GPA, but a 5.18 MCAT, and I didn't apply DO. So again, not a hard and fast rule, really depends, but you do want to ask yourself these things, like, would you rather reapply than go to a DO school? Or not? Would you rather just go to a DO school and you can achieve your goals that way? So that's just a couple things for you. So now actually making your list. Number one, you want to apply to all in-state schools. I personally am from Pennsylvania, and if you're from Pennsylvania, you know that there's truly no in-state medical schools per se, so that kind of sucks. But I still applied to like the PA schools, so University of Pittsburgh, Jefferson, Drexel, Temple, and Penn. The only one of those, if you're from PA, that you wouldn't apply to is Penn, because their median GPA and MCAT are crazy. It's like 3.9 and 5.22, something like that. I only applied because I went there for undergrad, so I just thought like, whatever. But that's one that I think you can forego if you're a PA applicant and you don't have stats that are, you know, crazy like that. If you're from any other state, there's a good chance that you have in-state schools, and you want to apply to those for sure, because a lot of schools have in-state bias, so they prioritize in-state applicants. So regardless of your stats, even if you're on the lower side, you still want to apply to your in-state schools. So put those on your list first. Number 2, along the same vein, you don't want to apply to schools that are out-of-state friendly. I see this mistake all the time when people post their school list on Student Doctor Network or Reddit, where they have a bunch of schools that are out-of-state unfriendly, but they still have them on their list for some reason, just because they maybe thought like, oh, this is a cool place to be, or it's a cool program. Those are all awesome. That's awesome, but you should be prioritizing other schools. Some schools that come to mind are University of Washington. It's an excellent school, but unless you live in the excuse me, in Wyoming, Washington, Alaska, Montana, or hold on, I have it written down somewhere, or Idaho, or have some really strong connection to any one of those places for whatever reason, you probably shouldn't be applying. Some other schools that come to mind are some of the UCs like UC Davis, UC Irvine, UC Riverside, not out-of-state friendly. So if you're not from there, you really have no business applying. Other schools that I can think of, University of Maryland, UNC, Rutgers, like Robert Wood Johnson, not super out-of-state friendly. So unless you have a super compelling reason to apply, like some tie to the state, even if it's not your state of residence, probably best to leave those out. I'm going to link a spreadsheet below that gives you, let me look at this. So in column Z, it tells you the amount of out-of-state versus in-state matriculants, and I want you to sort by A through Z. And basically, if the percentage is like under 40, under 50, you should probably stay away from those unless you have a very compelling reason to apply. Number 3, GPA and MCAT. So honestly, making a list using stats is really hard. Like people always say, like, well, just like look at MSAR. MSAR is the med school admissions requirements website, because it gives you the medians and I think it's like the 10th, 25th, 75th, and 90th percentiles for accepted students. But it's really hard, especially if you have unbalanced stats like mine. Like I had a 3.29 GPA and a 518 MCAT, so like I was on the median for most schools, but then way below even the 10th percentile for the same school. So it was like impossible. However, it is still, if you're a more traditional applicant with like more normal stats, then this can work for you. The way I recommend doing it is first using the MSAR. So go on MSAR, and there's on the left-hand side kind of like a search bar, and you can filter. So I want you to do like 0.2 to 0.3 plus minus your GPA, and then like 4 points plus minus your MCAT. So for example, if you have a 3.6 and a 510, you're gonna wanna put like 3.4 to 3.8 and 506 to 514, I think. If it's wrong, but you know what I'm trying to say. And you're gonna take a look at the schools that come up on that list and start adding them. Look at what might you be, I can't talk today. Look at the schools you might be interested in, location-wise, just kind of take a gander at that list. And again, those schools that come up in that search are probably a good bet to apply to. So that's also a good way to get a few schools on your list that you might not have thought of otherwise. If you're in a situation like me where you have like unbalanced stats, you can do one of two things. You can do, number one, you can sort of average your post-bac GPA. Again, this is if you did a post-bac. If you didn't, then I don't really have a method for you. But you can average your post-bac GPA with your undergrad GPA, and whatever that is, use as your GPA, and then use your regular MCAT. I did this, and when I do that, it comes up with a more like realistic list for me. So that's one way. Another way is honestly to post on Student Doctor Network, make an account, post on the what are my chances thread, and you can look at old ones to see kind of like how to structure it, and ask some of the advisors on there to make you a school list. You tell them your stats, you tell them your race or ethnicity, you tell them your extracurriculars, things like that. And there's a couple advisors on there that'll hop on and will make a list for you. That is not a perfect strategy because, again, it's just the opinion of a couple people. They might not take everything you want into consideration, but it's a good place to start and to sort of cross-reference what you have so far, the methods that I've told you up until this point. Another pretty good tool is the WedgeDog applicant rating system, which sounds crazy, but I think WedgeDog is the name of the Student Doctor Network user that made it. So it gives you a score, and with that score, it will tell you more or less how many schools in each tier you should apply to. So it'll tell you apply to this many top tier schools, this many high tier schools, this many mid tier, this many low tier, and then maybe a couple DO schools depending on what score you get. And it'll give you examples of schools in each tier. So that's also one way to add some schools you hadn't thought of, or remove some schools that you maybe thought that you wanted to add, but they might not make sense. So again, lots of resources. There's not one perfect way to make a list. I think it's really just about using as many tools as possible to end up with something somewhat reasonable. So I think we're on number 4 now. I don't know. Number 4 is another tool called admit.org. It's a relatively new tool as far as I'm aware. I'm going to insert a video of me using it to show you how it works for me, but basically ask you a couple questions and then it makes a school list for you. It's not perfect, as I'll show you in the video, but again, it's a good way to look at what schools are within reason for you. All right, so I'm just going to give you an idea of how this works and how it matched up to my actual results. So even this first question is kind of complicated if you have a post-bac or did a post-bac, because technically I graduated with 3.19, but my MCAT says 3.29, so I'm just going to put in 3.29. Year by year, let me take a quick look at my MCAS. Starting off real strong with a 2.82. That is crazy. But we did it anyway, folks. 3.47. And I'm going to make my 5th year my post-bac year, even though technically I took 2 post-bac years. There's no way for me to add another one, so this is fine. Okay. Your MCAT. Next question. Let me look at my MCAS. It was probably something like that. Ballpark. Had about 150 non-clinical. Had about 40 hours of shadowing. Had a lot of research hours. Probably, I'm gonna say like 4,000. Yes. Continue. I do not have any pubs. I don't have any of those. Did not serve in the military. I am disadvantaged. Do not have an athletic achievement. I went to Penn. State of residence is Pennsylvania. Female. I do not. Continue. Hispanic. Alright, let's get those results. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Alright, so Right off the bat, we have University of Pittsburgh, which I did get an interview at, and I was ultimately waitlisted. Stanford rejected me, UCSF rejected me, University of Michigan interviewed me and then put me on a waitlist. Mount Sinai interviewed me and then deferred me, so that's TBD. Case Western interviewed me and also put me on a waitlist, and BU interviewed me and accepted me. So far this is pretty good. Target schools. So just looking at this list, I don't think I got interviews from any of these. I applied to these two, Sydney Kimmel and Lewis Katz, didn't hear back. I didn't apply to Geisinger or Penn State. I just didn't really want to be there, like geographically. University of Colorado, I applied. They rejected me. Didn't apply here. Didn't apply here. Didn't apply here. Didn't apply here. I applied to Albert Einstein. Didn't get an interview. Applied to Georgetown. Rejected. Geisler rejected. U Cincinnati didn't apply. Ohio State didn't apply. Virginia Commonwealth rejected. Tufts haven't heard back. Baseline Drexel interviewed and got in. Didn't apply here. Applied here. Haven't heard back. Didn't apply here. Didn't apply here. Applied here. Rejected. Applied here. Didn't submit a secondary, so I don't know. Didn't apply here. Didn't apply here. Applied here and got accepted. Didn't apply here. So this is an okay list. Just to give you a rerun of places I did get interviews at, I'm just going to look at my list real quick. So I got interviews at BU, Case Western, Donald and Barbara Zucker School of Medicine, and I got into Zucker School of Medicine. I got an interview at Drexel, and I got in. I got an interview at Emory, and I got in, which I didn't see on this list. Got an interview at Quinnipiac, and I got in. I got an interview at ICANN Mount Sinai, and as I said, I was deferred. I got an interview at Kaiser Permanente, and I haven't heard back, so don't really know. Where else did I get? I got an interview at New York Medical College, and I turned down the interview because it was pretty late in the cycle, and I had other schools I wanted to go to. Let me see. I got an interview at Renaissance School of Medicine at Stony Brook University, and I turned down the interview. I got an interview at USF, Morsani, and then I was waitlisted. I got an interview at Michigan, as I said, and then waitlisted. Pittsburgh, then waitlisted. And that's it. So this overall is a pretty good list, but it did miss Emory and Zucker, which accepted me. So that's not too bad. However, I will say Emory is my top choice for now. So if I had only looked at this list, then I wouldn't have gone into Emory because I wouldn't have applied. So this is a good place to start and a good place to cross-reference other ways you're making lists. Don't use this as the end-all be-all, but it's a very good place to start, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what it looked like for me. Hey guys, so I'm editing the video right now, and I realized I didn't mention that I got interviewed and then waitlisted at UCSD. So that's another school that wasn't on this list that ended up giving me an interview. So it just goes to show that, again, you can apply to schools you want to as long as you are prudent about it. So, all right, back to the video. So using a combination of the things I said, you should start getting what looks like a pretty good list. My last tip, I think we're on number 5 or I don't know, I'm not keeping track. My last tip is that after you've done all this and you have a preliminary list, if there are still some schools on there that you really were interested in going to, but maybe your stats aren't up to par, I would still apply. So basically my tip is apply where you want, but only after you have the sort of baseline target, more realistic schools. I applied to Cornell, Harvard, Stanford. I had no business applying there, you know what I mean? But Cornell specifically, for example, I would have died to go to that school. I love that school. Unfortunately, I didn't get in, which is totally fine. But I just felt very compelling reasons to apply, so I threw in an application. So again, I wouldn't let, these lists deter you from applying to places that you really want to apply. but that doesn't mean like, oh, I'm only going to apply to the top 20 schools. No, you should again have the more realistic schools, and then if you have the time or really the money to throw in a couple more that are more reach schools, more dream schools, I don't see why not. You know what I mean? Like there's no harm. So, you know, if you have a couple dream schools, can't hurt to throw them in there as long as your entire school isn't, you know, unrealistic schools. So yeah, that's the video. Again, a lot of making a school list comes down to more specific, like unique personal factors. So if you need help or if you want me to look over your school list, I'm more than happy to do so. I'll leave below some information on how you can best contact me, and I would be happy to help. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks.